Welcome to Learn Yourself Respiration. So first thing which we are learning is pyruvate. This is the first step in which the 6 carbon molecule glucose break down into a 3 carbon molecule. This process is known as pyruvate. So here this process starts from the 6 carbon molecule of the glucose. We know it is C6H12O6. So it will convert into 3 carbon molecule, and this process is known as pyruvate. This happens in cytoplasm. So when it will convert into 3 carbon molecule, it also gives us energy. Now going forward, there will be 3 different processes. First, in absence of oxygen, this happens in yeast, that it will convert this 3 carbon molecule into ethanol, which is 2 carbon molecule, carbon dioxide and energy. Now absence of oxygen means this is anaerobic respiration, and which happens in yeast. So in anaerobic respiration, 3 carbon molecules will convert into 2 carbon molecules, and it will give carbon dioxide and energy. Then the second type of process is, once the pyruvate will happen, 3 carbon molecules will generated when the oxygen is less in our body, in our muscle cell. Then it will give us lactic acid, 3 carbon molecule and energy. This type of process will happen when the athlete is running and it requires lot of energy in short period of time. So our body cannot consume enough oxygen or cannot take enough oxygen from the atmosphere. So this process happens in lack of oxygen, and this happens in our muscle cell, where it will give us lactic acid and energy. This process is very fast. Our body will generate energy in short period of time compared to the normal respiration, to support the faster metabolic process of the body. For example, athlete is running and it requires a lot of energy in a short period of time. So in that case, the glucose burning will happen in lack of oxygen. It will give lactic acid and energy. Now the third type of process, this happens in presence of oxygen, in enough oxygen. And this happens in mitochondria, where it will give carbon dioxide, water and energy. This is a complete combustion of glucose molecule, and much more energy will be generated compared to this type of process which produces lactic acid. So there are 3 different types of glucose burning. We are seeing it here. So first process we have seen here is pyruvate. What is pyruvate? In pyruvate, C6 molecule will convert into C3. Now going forward, this C3 molecule will get combusted in 3 different types of process. This too will happen in human and in presence of oxygen. So this is aerobic respiration. Whereas this respiration is anaerobic respiration, which happens in yeast and in the absence of oxygen. It gives us ethanol, which is 2 carbon molecule, carbon dioxide and energy. Now 2 types of process which happen in human in presence of oxygen. In that, one happens with lack of oxygen, and in combustion of glucose molecule will be there. Whereas here the complete combustion of glucose will be there, and it will give us more energy compared to this lactic acid one. So these are the differences. When pyruvated 3 carbon molecule will further get burned and it will give energy. So anaerobic respiration and aerobic respiration, and under aerobic respiration there are 2 types of processes, with limited amount of oxygen and with complete amount of oxygen. Now energy through respiration. What all energy will be generated at the end of the combustion of glucose molecule, that energy where we are using in the body. So energy released during the process of respiration is used to make ATP molecule from ADP and inorganic phosphate. Now endothermic process in the cell then use this ATP to drive the reaction. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, which is energy currency for the cell. When terminal phosphate linkage in ATP is broken using the water, the energy equivalent to 30.5 kilojoule per mole is released. Now what is the use of ATP? So we are using ATP for various processes like contraction of muscle, protein synthesis, conduction of nervous impulses and many more other activities. Now how the respiration in plants will happen? That at night when there is no photosynthesis occurring, the CO2 elimination happens. So this is very important point here, that in the sunlight they will absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen, but at the night they will eliminate or they will release carbon dioxide at night when the photosynthesis is not happening. Now during the day, CO2 generated during the respiration is used up for the photosynthesis. Hence there is no CO2 release. During the day, oxygen will be released, and during the night, the carbon dioxide will be released. Now in aquatic animals, what will happen? The rate of breathing in aquatic organism is much faster than seen in terrestrial organisms, because the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly low compared to the amount of oxygen in the air. They are saying here that oxygen amount dissolved in the water is very less compared to the amount which is present in the air. So that's why they have to breathe faster to fulfill their requirement of the oxygen. Fishes take in water through their mouth and force it past the gills, where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. And that's why their respiration process, breathing process is faster compared to the terrestrial organism. Now lungs are a very important part of respiration process, and the reason for lung cancer here. So let us learn the reason for the lung cancer. The upper part of respiratory tract is provided with the small hair-like structure called cilia. So if these are the lungs, then on top of this surface of the lung, the cilia-like structure will be there, small hair-like structure will be there. This cilia help to remove the germs, dust and other harmful particles which we are inhaling along with the air. When the person will smoke, that smoke will go along with the air to the lung. Now, due to the germs, dust, smoke and other harmful chemicals enter the lungs, and it will cause infection, cough and even lung cancer. This happens only when there is a presence of smoke particle will be there into that. This happens when there is a presence of smoke particle will be there along with the air. So smoking is the main cause for the lung cancer. Respiration. Respiration is a very important process as it gives us fresh oxygen, and it is responsible for the gaseous exchange happens in the lungs. Now, nostrils, passage, lungs and alveoli are the important parts who are taking part into the respiration, and they are responsible for the gaseous exchange. First, nostrils. The air passing through the nostrils is filtered by fine hairs that line the passage. So nostrils help to filter the air. Whatever the hair-like particles will go along with the air, that will get filtered into the nostrils. Then comes passage. The passage is also lined with mucus, which helps in the process. From here, the air passes through the throat into the lungs. Rings of cartilage are present into the throat. This ensures that the air passage does not collapse. So this rings, you can see it over here into the figure. So once the air comes down from the throat to the passage, these rings of the cartilage will help that the passage will not collapse and the air will pass part by part, and here the mucus will help air to pass through it. Then comes lungs. The passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes which finally terminate in balloon-like structure which is called alveoli. Now alveoli is a balloon-like structure which will get filled up once the air will get into it, and it is responsible for gaseous exchange. Now alveoli provides a surface where the exchange of gases can take place. Now through the surface of alveoli, gaseous exchange will happen. Now what is the gaseous exchange? Gaseous exchange is release of CO2 and absorbing carbon dioxide from the fresh air. That is termed as gaseous exchange. So whenever I'll refer to gaseous exchange, that means it happens both the ways, that it is releasing carbon dioxide, that it is removing carbon dioxide, and at this and it will absorb oxygen from the fresh air. Now how this process will happen, that we are going to learn it in this paragraph. When we will breathe in, we lift our ribs and it will flatten our diaphragm, as if you will see here, into the chest cavity. When the air will gets into it, all the parts of the lungs will get filled with the air. So this diaphragm will flatten up as this chest cavity will come down. As it will swell up with the air, it will come down and diaphragm will be flattened up. Here you can see that diaphragm is up. It will get flattened up. It will come down once the lungs will filled with the air. And chest cavity becomes larger as a result. Because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and filled the expanded alveoli. Now once the chest cavity is filled with the air, where this air will go? Air will go to alveoli. Now alveoli is a small socket and small balloon-like structure which will fill with the air once we will breathe in the air. The blood brings carbon dioxide from rest of the body to release into alveoli. The blood which has been circulated into the body part, that is with the carbon dioxide, it is impure blood. So that blood also will come to the alveoli, and the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood and alveolar blood vessel to be transported to the cell, to the body. That's why we are referring to the gaseous exchange, because it will release the carbon dioxide and it will take up the oxygen from the fresh air. So this gaseous exchange will happen in alveoli, in alveolar air. During the breathing cycle, when air is taken in and let out, the lungs always contain a residual volume of air. Now the meaning of residual volume of air is some buffer volume of air will be always there into the lungs, because it will take some time for gaseous exchange. That it, from the impure blood, it will release carbon dioxide and it will again take up the oxygen. So that will take up some time. So this buffer volume of air will help lungs to pass fresh oxygen every time, so that there is a sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed for the carbon dioxide to be released. To take up the fresh oxygen and to release carbon dioxide, it will take some time. So lungs will always have some buffer volume of air, residual volume of air. And that is the reason why we can hold our breath for some seconds. And in these seconds, the lungs will use that buffer volume of the air. And instantly we will not die when we will hold our breath, because our body is using that buffer volume of the air. Body is using that oxygen which was there as a residual volume of air into the lungs. Now the pigment which is helping in this gaseous exchange is hemoglobin. The respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which has a very high affinity for the oxygen. So once the air will come to the alveoli, this hemoglobin will attach to the oxygen. It take up the oxygen from the air in the lungs and carry it to the tissue, which are deficient in oxygen before releasing it. Hemoglobin is present in red blood corpuscles, and once it will attach with the oxygen, it will make a compound like oxyhemoglobin. Then it will go to the cell which is deficient into the oxygen, and it will release the oxygen into the oxygen deficient cell. Now carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than the oxygen, and hence is mostly transported in dissolved form in our blood. So in blood, the water amount is there, and carbon dioxide will get dissolved into the water of the blood, and it will come back to lungs to get released from the nostril. Now oxygen will get attached to hemoglobin and will get transported to the required tissue. And that is how the whole respiration process will happen in our body. So thank you for watching and learning with us. If you have any doubt, please comment down below. I'll see you in next video. Till then, keep learning, keep sharing, and don't forget to subscribe, Learn Yourself.